I can't remember any Israeli Prime Minister that enjoyed such a position, that he would just ask for a meeting with the most important European leaders, and they will reply, yeah, come on, why not, let's talk.
You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com, where I'm excited to be speaking today live here on the radio, sort of, at least live right now where I am, to Paris, to Ariel Kahana, who is the top print journalist in Israel, and he is accompanying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his visit to Europe. Netanyahu went yesterday directly to Germany, where he met with Chancellor Merkel. I'm speaking to Ariel Kahana in Paris, where he will be accompanying Netanyahu to his meeting today with Prime Minister Macron and to an event celebrating Israel's 70th birthday there in Paris tonight. He's going to be going after that to England, where he's going to be meeting with the Prime Minister Theresa May. Now, the reason why I say that Ariel Kahana is the top print journalist in Israel is because he just moved to the top circulation newspaper in Israel, Israel Hayom, Israel Today, where he will have the top beat there as the diplomatic correspondent. And so this is his first week on the job, and he's already traveling to Europe with the Prime Minister. Ariel, thank you for coming here on Inside Israel Today on thelandofisrael.com.
Thank you, Gil, for having me, and thanks for the introduction. And by the way, here in Paris, it's raining, okay? A little bit different from the Israeli weather. So that's how we begin our day here in Europe.
Well, let's hope that the meeting with Netanyahu is better than the weather.
So, if we will go back to yesterday to Berlin, to Netanyahu's and Merkel meeting in Berlin, it was definitely a positive meeting. Some are saying the best meeting they had since Netanyahu became Prime Minister on 2009. Merkel is not a hugging person, but she accepted him with a hug and with a kiss. And more important was the declarations, the statements that she made, which in many aspects were quite positive with Israel. For example, she called for a complete withdrawal of Iranian forces from Syria, which is exactly the Israeli position. She announced on renewing the cabinet meetings between Israel and Germany. She was talking about the abuse by Hamas of women and children in Gaza to protest or to act against Israel, which again is the Israeli position. So after, I would say, many years of knowing each other, including years that the Palestinian issue sometimes even poised the atmosphere.
Poisoned,
yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday it was positive. There are still disagreements. For example, if I may say it, I asked her why wouldn't Germany recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You remember, if you will go back to history, that on 1990s, the international community, including Israel, recognized Berlin as Germany capital. So I asked her, why wouldn't you give us what we gave you 28 years ago? So she said what she said. Never mind. So it's not that everything is complete honeymoon. Let's say it this way, but it's definitely better than years before.
But Ariel Kahana, the German Chancellor, did say that she's staying in the Iran deal, and I assume that Prime Minister Merkel and Theresa May are going to say the same thing to Israelis. It's so obvious that was a bad deal, and that more efforts have to be made to stop Iran permanently from having nuclear weapons, and especially after the whole archive of documents proving that Iran was continuing its nuclear program was revealed, which showed how pathetic the inspections were, that they didn't discover them, but Israel did. How can it be that Europe still doesn't get it?
Well, I'll tell you, Gil, I think this argue is behind us in a way that the U.S. Pulled out from the JCPOA. We know that. We are now. I'm talking with you from Paris. It's the fourth visit of Netanyahu in Paris in last year, and the former three meetings with President Macron were aimed to persuade him to withdraw from the JCPOA. And let's say it frankly, we failed. I mean, Netanyahu didn't succeed to persuade Macron to pull out from the agreement. So all of that is now behind us because Trump did what he did, and now, and we heard that from Netanyahu yesterday in a briefing he gave us. Now he's looking to the future in a way. What do we do now? The day after the U.S. pulled out, how would Europe act? What's he going to do? For example, and if we listen from the, I would say the last update from Tehran this morning, they're saying they're gonna enrich more uranium than they are allowed. So maybe we are now beginning a way that in the end of it, the JCPOA will totally collapse. Okay, we are not still there. But if the U.S. pulled out, and if Iran is trying, to push the limits, which it is not allowed to do, and if the American sanctions, which will be which will be active in, I believe, 2 months or so from now, and will hurt Europe as well, if all that is going to happen in few months, so maybe the JCPOA might totally collapse. What do we do then? So trying to persuade Europe to pull out from the JCPOA is behind us. Netanyahu is now looking for the next step. First, about the agreement, the JCPOA, as you said. What do we do in the day after the U.S. pulled out? And secondly, it's an issue we didn't discuss. Secondly, the Iranian troops in Syria and the Israeli effort to push them out of Syria. Netanyahu demands totally withdrawal, so saying they will stay in Syria, but only far from the Israeli border. So that's another discussion regarding Israel, Iran, and all the international mess about it. Anyhow, as I said, the JCPOA is behind us, yes.
Perhaps a good sign is something that you wrote on the cover of Israel Hayom today, that the French might not be pulling out of the Iran deal, but one of the top companies in France, Peugeot, has decided that when their choice is pulling out, stopping to do business with America or stopping to do business with Iran, they're stopping to do business with Iran.
Well, that's the point, and it goes back to what we said before, why the deal might collapse. Because France and Europe in general do not want the JCPOA, or do not want to leave the JCPOA, okay? But when the Trump administration is announcing that he will put the sanctions active in few weeks, and those sanctions will hurt any European firm that will deal with Iran, it means that those companies has no other choice than to stop doing business with Iran. Okay, it is not coming from their good intentions. Okay, they're actually forced to do it. So maybe France and Germany and other countries has economic interest with Iran, and we know they do, but again, it's a U.S. move that forced them to stop or at least do least business with Iran, and again, that's why I was talking before about the scenario of the agreement collapsing. Okay, because it's a U.S. move that begins this process, and we might be in it in few weeks or months. And again, the French company that you mentioned is doing it, I believe, mostly because of the U.S. move, not because of the French government.
Okay, I want to shift to the Palestinian issue. I heard on the radio this morning that they put a clip of Netanyahu saying that there can be a peace process. All the Palestinians have to do is recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Was Netanyahu just saying that because he knows that they won't do that and he wants to get Europe off his back, or do you think Netanyahu is really working together with the Americans and to present a plan soon? There's been talk that would happen right after Ramadan, the last Friday of Ramadan. Is this coming Friday?
Well, it's a good question, Gil, and I believe you know better than me how hard is it to judge politicians' intentions. I don't know what is in Netanyahu's heart, and is he cheating the world, like some are saying, for almost 10 years now. I believe he's not. I believe that he is serious when he's saying, I'm ready to a deal, just recognize us. I believe he's serious. I believe he's committed to what he's saying. And if this move or this development will happen, that tomorrow, Abbas will recognize Israel as a Jewish state, and Hamas will announce he's changing his goal to destroy Israel, etc., which is not realistic. But if that will happen, so I believe Netanyahu will give territories for a peace agreement. But again, is this scenario realistic? After so many years, is there any chance it's going to happen? Especially now when Abbas is sick and it seems he's going to end his term. So you ask me if that's going to happen. I do not believe that it's going to happen in the coming months. But again, if such development will happen, and for example, which again I don't see this as realistic, but maybe a new Palestinian leader will show up and change from the basics, the Palestinians' intentions, and they will stop calling to destroy Israel, and they, we love the Jews, okay? So we will be in a different page, but we are very, very far from it now, and I believe all our listeners know that. So what are Netanyahu's intentions? I tell you what I see. But in any case, I quote Merkel again. Merkel said yesterday that she still believes two-state solution, but as she said, the situation is complicated, and it's very complicated.
We found the clip of Netanyahu speaking at the press conference with Merkel, and we'll play that for our listeners now so we could hear Netanyahu himself.
Because many Arab states recognize that Israel can contribute technologically to the development of their societies, a better life for their peoples. I think ultimately this is the most promising goal, the most promising route to have peaceful development with the Palestinians as well. It may not be possible today, but I believe it will be possible tomorrow. And that's what we're all working for, a better tomorrow.
That was Netanyahu in the press conference with Chancellor Merkel on Monday in Berlin, talking about chances for peace with the Palestinians. Now, Ariel Kahana, when you shifted from the Makori Show newspaper, where you've been working for the last 9 years, to Israel Hayom, the article that was in one of the websites that reported about your move listed your accomplishments and your scoops over the years, and I thought it hilarious that the top scoop that they listed was the interview that you had with Netanyahu on the eve of the election, and this report in Walla, which is the second most read Hebrew website in Israel, though not the best quality website, said that in that interview you got Netanyahu to come out against a Palestinian state. Now, the reason why this is so funny is I interviewed you on that other network that we had, Voice of Israel, where immediately after you had that interview, and you told the world, no, he didn't. He's still in favor of a Palestinian state. This was a mistake by the New York Times that mistranslated your interview, and the New York Times mistranslation made news all around the world. So tell the listeners here on this new network, on the Land of Israel network, what really happened in that interview.
Well, I'll answer you, Gil, but as far as I remember, I didn't say that there was a mistake by the New York Times or any kind of. Okay.
But what did Netanyahu?
So what happened? What happened then? As I said, it was I believe there too before the 2015 elections. Netanyahu was interviewed by many media outlets at the time, and I was one of the journalists that had the option to do it. And I was asking him about the Palestinian state. My question was, in case you will be re-elected, is that correct that the Palestinian state will not be established? And his answer was one word. His answer was correct, which means that as long as this government is functioning, okay, the current government, Netanyahu at least promised to his voters that a Palestinian state wouldn't be established. Did he say that because he's gonna push such policy, or did he say that, as we suggested before, only because he estimates it's not realistic to happen? I don't know to tell you. Again, it's his intentions, what's going on in his heart or mind. It's for him to tell.
But the context of your question...
But that's what he said. Excuse me?
The context of your question when you were asking it was you were talking about all the terrible things going on in the region. ISIS was very strong at the time. And I mean, you were asking, with all these things happening, do you see a Palestinian state being created? And when he said no in the coming term, he was kind of lamenting it. He wasn't coming out against it. He didn't say he didn't want a Palestinian state. Exactly.
By the way, he was the one. The reason I asked this question was because he gave me kind of a lecture why it wouldn't be wise, why it would be very not wise to have a Palestinian state now in our times. But he didn't say he didn't commit himself to that. And what I wanted as a journalist, I pushed him to make this commitment. That's why I asked him in a very direct way, in case you will be re-elected, there won't be a Palestinian state. And then he said yes. So again, if we go to the bottom line, for this government, he is committed not to establish a Palestinian state. What will happen after the next elections? I don't know. Let's see when we come close to that. But again, it was kind of mixing realistic diagnose of what's going on in the Middle East and in Israel, etc., with an election promise. That's the way I see this headline I really had a few years ago.
And we have elections will be sometime in 2019. It's already almost mathematically impossible for the elections to be held in 2018. So whether they're going to be on time in the set date of November the 5th of 2019, or whether they're going to be in February or March, we still don't know. But last question. In your parting column that you wrote for the Makori Show newspaper, you talked about how you've been writing all along that there was going to be no diplomatic tsunami if there's no peace process with the Palestinians, that all the naysayers and all the people predicting Israel's doom were wrong, and that you feel somewhat vindicated that you got it right. So can you give us a hopeful prognosis here on the Land of Israel Network, which is a network that really promotes a positive message about Israel to the world?
If we go back to the past, I would say there are two aspects to what happened in those years. You know, I don't want to go into the fake news discussion or use such terminology, but we do have a problem, Gil, in Israel about, I would say, not few journalists who are mixing the wishes with their articles, okay? All those, and not only them, but also politicians. All this talk we had about diplomatic tsunami or oscillation or so, I think it was 2011, that, you know, I was just beginning that time, and I read my colleagues writing that Israel is isolated. So after a few months, I just asked from the Foreign Ministry to give me a report about how many visits we had in Israel of, you know, senior leaders from around the world, and do they come more or do they come less? And the numbers were very clear. They are coming. They are now coming even today. They are coming even much more. But even then, they were coming quite a lot, and they were coming more and more. And I believe that was my first wake-up call that told me that again, all this talk about isolation is just not related to the reality. Okay, people spoke from the wishes, not from the facts.
Left-wing reporters that wanted to bring the prime minister
down.
Well,
okay, you said it, and I do not disagree. So maybe that was the point that I was beginning to see things a little bit different. Now, no question that today, especially under or with President Trump and all what he is doing to Israel, which is really, it's kind of miracle. You know, I don't have to remind you or all the listeners about the moving embassy and the JCPOA we discussed, etc., and the veto, really,
the United Nations,
exactly, and all of that.
Resolution in the United Nations in many, many years.
Yes,
the United States is the only country that voted for it, but at least it was proposed.
And the list is much longer. Today, really, Israel is enjoying a very, very good period of time in measures of diplomatic, and not diplomatic, but only economical point of view. But my aspect is diplomatic. I mean, you know, we discussed in the beginning of our conversations this kind of visit, three days by Netanyahu meeting the three important leaders of Europe. I can't remember any Israeli prime minister that enjoyed such a position, that, you know, he would just ask for a meeting with some kind of European leader, the most important European leaders, and then we reply, yeah, come on, why not, let's talk, okay? So no question, today we are in a very, very positive period of time when it comes to the diplomatic position of Israel in the world. Now, let's be very, very frank with ourselves. If in 2 years or more from now, a different president will be elected, a democratic president will be elected in the U.S., which although it's totally legitimate by the Americans to choose their president, then we might be in a different position. That again, like during the Obama time, we will have, as Israelis, we will have to fight for our positions. You know, we might meet some difficulties. It won't be as easy as it is now, but what is still true, and we have to say it, Gil, it's true from the day Israel was established. It's not, or let's say it in a positive way. We have to fight for our positions. We have to stand for our positions. Like every country in the world, we have to do what is right for us. Although sometimes some of our best friends might not agree, might disagree. Okay, since you know, the establishing of Israel by Ben Gurion was against the U.S. president. Okay, Truman recognized Israel just after Ben Gurion did what he did, although Truman asked him not to do it. Okay, and again
that's an important reminder.
Yeah, and since then it goes the same to the 6 days war.
The 6-day war. It's the anniversary today of the 6-day war.
Exactly, and so on. And you know, those 70 years of history are very long. So we have to stand for our interest. Of course, we have to do it in a wise way. We have to respect our friends. We have to cooperate with them as much as we can. But when it comes to an important interest of us, and the basic interest is, you know, to keep the security of the Israelis in their country, then we have to stand on our interests. And although, again, some of our friends might not agree, and we have to maneuver when such times will come, if they will, such hard times will come, if they will come. And what is even more important is that if you compare Israeli economy, Israel defense or security positions, Israel political or diplomatic position compared to 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, thanks God, it becomes much and much better. And if a few years from now we will find ourselves again not in the best position, or with a president which is not in love with us as Trump is, so we will be in a better shape to deal with those difficulties. That's the way I see it. And again, maybe it wouldn't be as good as it is now, but we have no option to give up about what is important, or what is essential to Israel and to the Israelis. That's the way I see it.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. I will add for our listeners a French word. I would describe what Israel's going through right now as a diplomatic, economic, security renaissance. And that's something we have to be very thankful to God for, and thankful to Netanyahu as well. So, Ariel Kahana, I hope that the sun comes out there for being positive.
It's still raining.
It's still raining. Oh, well. Well, listeners are going to be listening to this over the course of the day, and they can check the weather report there in Paris and find out if Ariel Kahana stayed dry. Thank you for being here with us on Inside Israel today on the Land of Israel Network, and good luck there in following Netanyahu through the darkest places in Europe.
Thank you so much, Gil.
Have a great day. And thank you, listeners, for being here on Inside Israel today, where you find out what's going on behind the scenes. And you heard a report there from behind the scenes in Paris with the Prime Minister. We'll have more exciting shows here next week and in the weeks ahead here on Inside Israel today on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com from Jerusalem. Thank you. Bye-bye.
In an unprecedented revelation that shocked the world, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu exposed Iran's diabolical plan to build nuclear weapons and ultimately thrust the world into nuclear war. How did Israel successfully penetrate the most protective and secretive bunker in Tehran and extract thousands of files from under the Iranian regime? And the one question nobody seems to be asking is, why does Iran want to destroy Israel in the first place? This week on Israel Inspired.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Sharing the truth and beauty of Israel